In just a matter of hours, the usual winter rhythm in Missouri was completely shattered. A rapidly intensifying storm swept across the state, turning the highways we use every day into frozen danger zones. From St. Louis all the way to Kansas City, a dangerous mix of heavy wet snow, slush, and ice wiped out lane markings and dropped visibility to near zero. Drivers were forced to crawl along at a snail's pace or stop dead in their tracks. By late morning, the major corridors, we're talking Interstate 70, I-64, I-44, and I-55, were already seeing chain reaction crashes. Semi-trucks were jackknifed across lanes, and passenger cars were sliding helplessly into shoulders and guardrails. What was supposed to be a standard commute instantly turned into gridlock stretching for miles. Traffic cameras near Highway 40 showed vehicles stalled out in both directions, while emergency alerts warned residents to stay off the roads unless it was an absolute emergency. State troopers were scrambling, dispatched to multiple collision scenes at once, often before the previous wrecks had even been cleared. The scary thing is, this storm didn't bring massive snowfall totals. Instead, it hit with precision, exploiting the timing, the temperature, and the heavy traffic. It really exposed just how fast winter weather can overwhelm even our most traveled roadways. What happened next was a true test for emergency responders and the patience of thousands of drivers across Missouri. By early afternoon, the true impact of the storm was undeniable across St. Louis and Kansas City. What was falling from the sky wasn't just snow. It was a dense, moisture-heavy mix that packed down instantly under tires, turning the pavement into a sheet of unpredictable ice. On Interstate 70, Missouri's most critical east-west lifeline, vehicles started losing control within minutes of hitting untreated patches. Troopers reported that things escalated fast. Jackknifed semis blocking the way, cars spinning out across on-ramps, and stalled vehicles freezing the traffic behind them. Authorities tried to implement rolling closures, then lifted them, only to shut them down again as fresh crashes erupted before tow trucks could even reach the scenes. In several spots, drivers found themselves trapped for hours, completely boxed in by disabled vehicles ahead and impassable shoulders on the sides. Visibility plummeted as the snowfall got heavier, cutting sight lines down to just a few hundred feet. The wind whipped snow across bridges and elevated overpasses, causing those exposed surfaces to ice over the fastest. Drivers described it as trying to drive on glass, where braking distances doubled or tripled in a split second. Emergency responders were stretched to the limit, constantly rotating between the urban interstates and the outlying connectors where rural crashes were happening far from help. Even the plow crews struggled to keep up, as the slush refroze behind them almost immediately. A lane that had just been cleared became hazardous again within minutes. By mid-afternoon, authorities issued blunt advice: stay off the roads. The storm had reached a point where just trying to move was the primary risk, and Missouri's highways stopped functioning as transportation routes. They had turned into evolving hazard zones. As the storm tightened its grip, the breakdown of traffic control triggered a domino effect across Missouri's metro corridors. One crash quickly turned into 5. 5 became 15. Disabled vehicles blocked access points, making it impossible for plows, ambulances, and tow trucks to reach the most critical scenes. In several spots along Interstate 70, the gridlock was so bad that emergency crews were forced to abandon their vehicles and hike to crash sites on foot. State patrol logs showed a steady stream of collision reports, many involving secondary impacts where drivers slowed down for an earlier wreck only to be struck from behind on the slick pavement. The semi-truck collisions were especially disruptive. Once a tractor-trailer lost traction, its sheer mass turned it into a barricade capable of shutting down entire highway segments. In Kansas City's outer loops, a single jackknifed rig caused traffic to freeze for miles in both directions. Responders were working in rotating teams, often jumping from one incident to the next without a single pause. Paramedics were treating injuries ranging from whiplash and fractures to more serious trauma, all while troopers tried to manage traffic in near whiteout conditions. The snow kept falling, but the bigger danger came from compaction. Slush was freezing into uneven ruts that grabbed tires and yanked vehicles sideways without warning. Drivers trapped in the jam described waiting 2 or 3 hours without moving more than a few hundred feet. Some were running low on fuel. Others stepped out briefly to check the conditions, only to retreat immediately as wind-driven snow cut visibility down to nothing. By late afternoon, officials acknowledged a hard truth. clearing crashes alone wasn't enough anymore. The storm had overwhelmed the system itself. What Missouri was facing now wasn't just a weather event. It was a full-scale transportation failure, unfolding in real time, lane by lane. As the highways locked into place, the storm's impact shifted from statistics to a test of human endurance. Thousands of drivers weren't just commuting anymore, they were waiting. Parents trying to reach schools or daycares sat motionless in traffic, watching fuel gauges drop as the daylight faded away. Delivery drivers abandoned their schedules entirely. Some motorists shut off their engines to conserve gas, restarting them every few minutes just to keep the heaters running. On elevated ramps and bridges, vehicles were frozen in position, unable to move forward or back. A few drivers carefully exited their cars to check the road, only to realize the pavement beneath their boots was pure ice. Any attempt to push or steer vehicles off the roadway risked serious injury. The safest option, authorities said, was often to just stay inside and wait. School districts across the region began early dismissals and canceled after-school activities, as administrators realized that normal dismissal times would send buses directly into the worst conditions. Transit agencies started sounding the alarm, warning of severe delays and rerouting buses away from steep hills and dangerous bridges. In some cases, they had to suspend service entirely because the routes were just impassable. Meanwhile, social media lit up with images of abandoned cars cluttering side streets, stalled semis blocking neighborhood entrances, and residential roads turning into snow-packed corridors where you couldn't even see the pavement. But the real danger was the timing. As temperatures dropped heading into the evening, everything wet started to refreeze. That slush hardened into solid ice, locking vehicles in place and erasing whatever traction was left. For a lot of folks, it wasn't about getting home fast anymore. It was just about staying warm, staying safe, and making it through the night. This storm had turned ordinary roads into endurance tests, and the worst was still to come. As conditions deteriorated, emergency systems across Missouri were pushed to their absolute limits. State troopers, highway patrol, and local police were suddenly juggling dozens of crash scenes at once, often fighting through limited visibility and unsafe roads just to get there. On I-70 alone, dispatchers were flooded with continuous calls. Spinouts, jackknifed semis, and vehicles trapped between exits with nowhere to turn around. Ambulances struggled to reach the injured as traffic lanes collapsed into frozen bottlenecks. In several intense situations, first responders actually had to bail out of their vehicles and approach on foot, carrying medical gear across ice-covered pavement while the snow kept falling. Fire departments reported delayed response times, not because they lacked crews, but because the roads themselves were simply impassable. Highway maintenance teams were working non-stop, rotating crews through extended shifts, but the plows were fighting a losing battle against the rapidly accumulating slush. Even after a lane was cleared, blowing snow and refreezing moisture wiped out that progress within minutes. Salt treatments started losing their punch as pavement temperatures dropped, allowing ice to bond instantly to the road surface. Officials kept issuing travel advisories, practically begging residents to stay off the roads unless it was absolutely necessary. One state official put it bluntly, "This is not your routine winter storm." They warned that every single car added to the mix just increased the danger, not only for the drivers but for the crews out there risking their lives to help them. Hospitals braced themselves for a surge in patients, preparing for everything from severe crash trauma and nasty slip and fall injuries to early signs of hypothermia among stranded motorists. Tow companies were completely overwhelmed, reporting wait times that stretched into hours. Some operators physically couldn't reach vehicles stuck on elevated ramps or trapped behind disabled semis. By the time night fell, the reality set in. Emergency responders couldn't solve this crisis alone. The storm had simply outpaced the infrastructure, the manpower, and the planning. It exposed just how quickly a fast-moving winter system can break even the most experienced agencies. Meteorologists explain that this storm intensified with such alarming speed because of a volatile collision of weather systems. You had a massive surge of Arctic air plunging south into the central U.S. right as a moisture pack system rolled in from the plains. The result was a narrow but incredibly powerful band of winter weather capable of dumping heavy, wet snow in a very short window, basically the worst possible recipe for road travel. Surface temperatures were hovering right around the freezing mark when the precipitation started, which meant the snow fell wet and dense. As traffic drove over it, tires mashed that snow into slush. Within hours, dropping temperatures caused that slush to refreeze, creating a hardened layer of ice that plows and salt just couldn't penetrate. Bridges and overpasses were the first to freeze over, cooling rapidly from below as cold air circulated underneath. The wind played a huge role, too. Gusts funneled snow across open highways, dropping visibility to near zero in exposed stretches. Drivers would be cruising through a clear section only to be blindsided moments later by total whiteout conditions. That sudden loss of visibility left zero reaction time, fueling those massive chain reaction crashes. And on top of all that, forecasters were warning of a secondary, invisible hazard: black ice. As the snowfall finally tapered off, residual moisture on the roadways refroze invisibly, particularly overnight. What looked like simple wet pavement became a near-frictionless surface capable of sending vehicles sliding without any warning. Climatologists note that these rapid transition storms, systems that shift from rain to snow to ice within hours, are actually becoming more common. For drivers, this creates a false sense of security early on, followed by sudden, severe danger. Understanding the science doesn't undo the damage, but it explains why this storm was so unforgiving. It wasn't just winter weather. It was winter weather at its most deceptive. As the storm finally began to loosen its grip, the aftermath across Missouri told a sobering story. Miles of interstate remained scarred by wreckage. Disabled vehicles sat abandoned along ramps and shoulders, while tow trucks, plows, and emergency crews worked through the night-clearing lanes one by one. Traffic slowly, cautiously returned, but the toll was heavy. State officials confirmed dozens of crashes, multiple serious injuries, and countless close calls. While, thankfully, no mass casualty event was reported, authorities stressed that the outcome could have been far worse. Many drivers were stranded for hours in freezing conditions, relying on limited fuel, dying phone batteries, and the hope that help would reach them in time. Transportation departments warned that the danger didn't end just because the snow stopped. Falling temperatures spiked the risk of overnight refreezing, turning that residual moisture into black ice, one of winter's deadliest hazards. Bridges, overpasses, and untreated roads remained especially dangerous heading into the next morning's commute. Emergency managers issued a clear message: winter storms do not need extreme snowfall totals to become deadly. Timing, temperature swings, traffic volume, and visibility matter just as much. A single decision to push through can trigger a chain reaction affecting hundreds of lives. This storm stands as a stark reminder that preparation, patience, and restraint save lives. Staying off the roads, delaying travel, and respecting warnings aren't just inconveniences. They are survival choices. If you liked the analysis in this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Please share this video with your friends, family members, and relatives. And finally, if you found this report helpful, please hit the like button. This helps us beat the algorithm and ensures this truth reaches more people who need to hear it. Thank you for watching.